Hello! What we're going to look at today is Hawk Roosting by Ted Hughes. I'm going to work through the poem with you, in particular thinking about how power is presented within the poem. So let's go. First thing I'm going to do, as always, is start off with my context. Okay, remember that those are the surrounding factors to a piece of text, a piece of prose, piece of poem. So what life was like, bits about the author that would have an influence. So this poem was published in 1960 by Ted Hughes. Hughes was quite a controversial and political poet, but also a writer in his own right. At this time, he was still quite young. He was, I do believe, in his 30s, but he was only 4 years into his marriage with another very famous author, Sylvia Plath, and their marriage ended 3 years later. And for those, Hawk Roosting is, on the surface, a poem that is literally about a hawk in a tree talking about how great he is. However, under that, it can be a metaphor for how the government treats the public. Ted Hughes mentioned that could be an interpretation of it. It could also be Hughes and his relationship with women, his relationship with his wife, and how he perceives himself. So there's a couple of different interpretations we're going to look at. So the first thing to look at is the fact that it starts with, so in terms of food chain, that's logical. In terms of location, again, that makes sense because he's a predator. He can see everything. But metaphorically, okay, and try and think about, so these are literal things almost. Metaphorically, could it be that he is actually superior? And that's reinforced with this notion of my eyes are closed. Now, clearly, that's him telling us that he has no threat. There's nothing he considers to be between his head and feet. Now, hooked and hooked, that repetition, that adjective there. Hooked head and hooked feet. So if we think about the feet, it would almost be like a claw, okay, as the beak would on the head. And so they are kind of like danger, they're weapons. Or in sleep rehearse perfect kills and eats. Now, and even in his dreams, he's rehearsing, he's perfecting. We know that this gives him for the statement that it is really convenient. If something's convenient, it means it's suited for you, it's worked out for you. Of the high trees. Again, we've got this repeated preposition there. That location, that adjective high and preposition of top. Okay, he's reinforcing that he is right up there. The air's buoyancy, so buoyancy is kind of the, I'd say floatiness, the lightness, and the sun is superior to earth. And it's upward for my inspection. That there, upward. It's as though he is above it. He is above earth. So in terms of power, and I'm going to put hierarchy. So hierarchy is the order of things, like a family tree almost. My inspection. So he is going to essentially critique nature. He is going to God. It took all of it, whole. So everything to produce my foot. Now, here, it's a real kind of patronizing, so putting someone down, and diminishing, so reducing something, diminishing. Comment. It took the whole of God, all of his work, to make my foot. Tense change. Took and now. I hold creation in my foot. And so he's saying he controls God or nature. He controls God or nature. And again, that idea of foot, it's a lower body part. It's even still beneath him. Or fly up. So we've got that juxtaposition there between up, that high and low, and revolve it all slowly. So here, this mirrors. Now, I do believe that sophistry is the idea of either getting something wrong or being kind of making mistakes. I do believe, but you can always check me up on that. My manners are tearing off heads. These are both metaphors. Okay. Again, we've got that violent imagery that obviously links to the nature of a hawk. And again, we've got that idea. There's no alternative. And it's really organized. One path of my flight is directed through the bones of the living. Here, the choice of the fact that he goes through, again, it's quite violent and destructive. And uncaring, through the bones of the living, we've got here, again, this oxymoron almost, that juxtaposition of life and death. No arguments assert my right. And here he means a sentence, really important because he's stating it, it is a fact. Nothing has changed since I began. Nothing has changed. Again, we've got this theme of no arguments assert my right. Everything's an advantage, the locked. So nothing has changed. He is maintaining, he is ruling essentially, almost as though like a dictator. Okay, where one person rules over everyone else. My eye has permitted no change, and that's why what he is. He wants to control everything in nature, in his life, in everywhere around him, in nature as well. So remember I said that this poem could be seen as the hawk being a metaphor for, I'll just put it down here. So the hawk, it could be government. It could be Hughes. It could be a range of things, and obviously it literally could be a hawk. Here, if it is going to